Welcome to Valley Home Vibes, the podcast all about the sizzling hot real estate market right here in the Valley of the Sun, Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, GT Campanile, joined by Realtor Srey Kalyani and our one and only infamous Realtor, Kevin Price.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be discussing advantages and disadvantages of HOAs. So HOAs have been around, for a long time, but they've been in the news a lot recently just because I think HOAs have kind of inserted themselves into every bit of our business and our property, right? So with the recent state policy changes down in Florida, we'll discuss that. And then just the general, I think it's more of a suspicion of HOAs among, normal everyday people. Let's get into basically what is an HOA. You guys are realtors and have to deal with HOAs probably nearly 100% of the time on any given transaction. What is an HOA?
Well, so the HOAs is homeowner associations, right? So if you're buying a house that have HOA, you're going to expect to pay those, and those could be monthly, quarterly, and they're basically for to take care of maintenance, common area, amenity, and making sure the community stay attractive and well kept. So that's one thing. One positive thing about HOA.
Yeah, they do help to try and keep things neat and orderly for the most part. And it depends if you're in a gated neighborhood or a regular non-gated community.
So let me just give let's get the official definition here on Wikipedia. Take that for what it's worth. Okay, HOA, right, which is the abbreviation. They're sometimes called POAs, Property Owners Association, is a private association-like entity in the U.S., Canada, and the Philippines, and certain other countries, often formed either ipso jure in a building with multiple owner occupancies or by a real estate developer, which is what we see most often here in Arizona, for the purpose of marketing, managing, and selling homes and lots in a residential subdivision. The developer will typically transfer control of the association to the homeowners after selling a predetermined number of lots. I can attest to that. In our particular development, the developer ran the HOA initially and then handed it over to basically the homeowners who, we elect, representatives to represent us on the HOA. And so this seems to be a pretty good little definition. And just throw some stats out there, because HOAs are extremely common, probably more so than what most people think. As of 2020, so this is already 4 years old, there were 351,000 community associations in the U.S. So that's a lot. And they are managing $9 trillion worth of assets. That's a lot of money collectively. So that number is based on more than just the suburban HOAs we think. Condos also have an HOA, and manufactured home developments, things like that.
Yeah, and then one HOA could also be in charge of 4, 5, 10 different communities at the same time. So they're not just stuck. It's not one company per community. Because I've been in 2 different cities and I've had the same HOA company.
74 million Americans live in HOA communities. Which is about a quarter of the U.S. population. That's a big number.
That's more than I expected.
60 to 70% of those HOAs are professionally managed, meaning that it's not by resident volunteers. So I can say that ours is professionally managed, but I think people typically think of HOAs as kind of like volunteers in the neighborhood, right? 60 to 70% are some kind of HOA organization that's been hired to run.
Well, it's a board member, but it had to make up some of the residents. So yes, it could be professional, but there have to be some of the residents that are on the member because there's voting, right? Because you have to remember, HOA do increase. And if you have just a bunch of business people and there's no residents, there's really no one on the side of the the resident that live in there. And if you're voting to increase the monthly payments due, if you're just business owner and you have no stake in living in that community, you're going to vote for increase, right? So it had to be majority vote. So that's why it had to make up some of the residents. And it's like they're able to increase 20% per year. That's pretty crazy.
That's ridiculous.
That
Yeah,
is
and that
ridiculous.
is true.
So that's why
There's
it's
usually
important to have.
representation in the community. So you're right. And I think what they mean by professionally managed is, so the residents still are probably making the decisions, and there's a democratic process in there. But I think the administrators behind the scenes and who's actually calling up and getting quotes and bids from landscapers, who's doing all the legwork on the day-to-day basis.
Right.
I think, even residents who are, probably working, have their own lives to live, they're just wanting this to be outsourced. So the people who come in to administrate these HOAs are professionals that all they do is run the HOA. So let's bring it here to Arizona. Nearly 1/3 of Arizona homes, so this is a lot higher than America at large, 1/3 are part of an HOA. It's I think it said second highest percentage in the United States.
Missouri
now behind
is the
Florida,
first.
right? What was it?
Missouri is actually number one, the highest, actually.
Oh, Missouri.
The highest
Okay.
HOA, yeah.
So
who
I'm
would've
getting this
thought?
from Phoenix Agent Magazine, and this was in the April edition of Phoenix Agent Magazine of 2023.
Okay.
And 22% of homes are part of an HOA nationally. This is last year. In Arizona, 875,000 of the state's 2.8 million homes, or 31.1%, are in an HOA. And it says that ranks fifth in the U.S. I've heard various stats, but this is looks like fairly recent. The average HOA fee is in Arizona is $448. That's the second highest in the nation.
Really?
Now
That's a lot.
that surprised me.
Per month.
That's per month. $448 per month.
Per month.
And this study also noted, as we're going to discuss further today on the pros and cons, that residents often have, quote unquote, a love-hate relationship with HOAs.
Absolutely.
So, I think here's kind of the bottom line with HOAs, and probably what we'll dig in today is, on one side, you've got folks that try to talk about the benefits. Probably developers would definitely take this side. And actually a lot of homeowners, proponents of HOAs argue that they help maintain property values, provide amenities, and create a sense of community.
Security
Now, on the other
as well.
side, what was that?
Security, because they do have.
Yeah,
like,
and I guess
guards
that
or
would be part of it if you got a gate or something, or if there's some kind of controlled access, right? Because I don't live in a community with a gate, and so I don't think there's any security that my HOA provides, frankly. But if you have a gated community, the HOA would certainly be managing that access, I'm guessing.
Well, you do see some community, quote, you have more police officers driving through. Like, for example, our community, it's not gated, but somewhat we do have a lot of, police officer. I mean, you're always seeing police officer driving through. In a way that is, I consider it security, right? Like our kids, I don't feel like they're in any danger. Like I walk to the grocery store at 10 o'clock at night. I don't feel like I'm going to be raped and robbed at all. I mean, like not many people that I talk to, have enough confidence to walk to the grocery store at 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm. No, not at all.
So that's why in a way it's high, but it's for your safety as well. So what do you put a price on your kid's safety? You put a price on, I guess that's it. It depends on who you ask. Like if it was just me and my spouse, I probably don't really care where I live, right? But if I have kids, I want something nicer. I'm willing to pay the HOA as long as I know there's going to be police officer passing by. There's people are watching out for each other. There's not going to be any shady people. So that's the pro.
Those benefits, security, I buy that. If that's a component of their infrastructure, right? I think the main one that people often quote is they help keep the value of my home a loft,
Right.
or it increases the value versus non-HOA property. So this study from Phoenix Agent Magazine that I was quoting earlier says that homes in an HOA are on average worth about 4% more. So that isn't a stunning increase. It's certainly more. And you could say, okay, I'll buy into that because you buy, say a $400,000 home, and your home is probably gonna be worth $16,000 more, right, than somebody who isn't in an HOA. And that's a nice tidy sum, to get when you go to sell. Are the fees worth it? That's, I think, the real, question. What are you getting in exchange for the HOA fees? And I think that's what the detractors, would say is, on the flip side, the critics contend that HOAs can be overly restrictive. They impose burdensome fees and sometimes lack transparency or fairness in the governance. So, are you guys hearing anything back from your clients, when you're showing them homes, on whether they want to be in an HOA or they don't want to be in an HOA?
I get both, but if they do not want to be in an HOA, they will let you know very quickly in the conversation. Usually, that's one of the very top things they say before they even describe the house. I don't want to be in an HOA, and so immediately you're thinking not anywhere inside the 101 or the 303 anymore. But yeah, that's the big thing, is they'll let you know right away if they do or don't want that HOA burden or restrictions.
Yeah,
So
I
my
think
clients,
I think that it, from what I hear from, I think what you said, Kevin, they will tell you right away because that's a big deal to them. Or along the way, they're kind of sensing what the fees are going to cost. The feedback I received is, if it's $50, they're typically not barking about it. But if it's over 100, they tend to, get a little angry about that, or they want to know what they're getting for it. Yes, Ray.
so most of my clients, they don't want HOA, right? But the community that they describe to me that they want, you can't get it without being an HOA. They want cleanness. They want everything to look manicured. They want everything to look alike. No cars parked. Well, that's an HOA community, right? You cannot want that and then not want to pay the HOA. So yeah, I'm with Kevin. A lot of them come out like, okay, but who want to pay if they have a choice, right? They're going to say, hey, if you could find me all that, but without the HOA, great. But at the end of the day, most of those people will pay the HOA. So yes, I'll ask, hey, do you want HOA? They'll say no HOA, but I'm still going to add the HOA to my list because, once I show them the house, they're like, okay, that's worth it. It's fine. But also on the downside, with the HOA, we have to kind of look because it is pricing our clients out of the home. If they're barely squeezing into the house, now these HOA, it's really, increasing what they are, decreasing what they can afford. So that's also something to think about. The high HOA is pricing family out of homes.
Yeah, that does add to the what they call debt to income ratio. So, people don't realize that an HOA bill is not part of your mortgage bill. Like when you get that bill in the mail, HOA isn't in there. So it's going to be paid separately to the HOA. And they're going to bill you sometime, maybe a month or two in, and you'll start getting those. But when you go to qualify for the loan, the HOA is very much part of, whether you qualify or not. They're going to include that in your debt to income ratio. And it is a deal killer. I've had, people who are just barely making it, like 45, 50% of, their income is servicing debt and other bills. And that HOA just pushes it over the line. I want to go back really quick because we were, wondering about Missouri earlier. And this is interesting. So Ray, you're not, far off here with one of those stats you quoted. The states with the highest percentage of HOAs, I thought it was Florida. That is correct. 45%.
I would think it's California.
Well, we'll just wait for it. Okay, Florida, 45%. Colorado, 38.6. California, 36.8. Washington, 31.2. And Arizona comes in fifth at 31.1, as we stated. Now, Missouri has the highest average HOA monthly fee at $469, followed by Arizona's $448. The national average is $390. That to me is insane. What's pushing that up, right? Because I see nothing but 100 to 150, right, at most in the suburbs. If you have a really primo neighborhood, like say a Toll Brothers, maybe you're paying 200. And then on the lower end, you get some of these smaller developers, and like the HOAs would be 25, $50, and it takes care of some of those common areas. I can only imagine like condos, some of these high rises that cost like
That's what it is.
Yeah,
that push that average up.
the condos have all those associated fees and maintenance men and landscapers because that's a one-stop shop. The homeowner doesn't do anything; they just have to stay there. So I believe that's where the prices. That's what I would assume is that the prices from those condominiums are the ones raising the prices for the whole state.
And there you do
And
get the
is it
security, right?
Missouri? So is it Missouri have more of those type of homes probably, right? Like
I don't know what
high
we
rise
could
and
say, Kansas City. What are the other I don't know the other major cities really in Missouri. I know Kansas City's a big one.
You got St. Louis would be the only other one.
St. Louis, yeah, there you go. On the other side of the state. And those are obviously big cities. And I don't know, I've never imagined them as having tons of condos. Like when I think of condos, I think of like Chicago and New York and LA or something.
Yeah.
But those condos, there's something to be said for that fee. So it isn't just maybe the guy, sitting in the lobby, scanning your card in, or kind of, as the gatekeeper helping you when you need to, with something. Rather, they have like a permanent representative basically of the HOA. But then you also have obviously parking, and you've got all this infrastructure associated with having a high rise, and you've got the roof, and you've got the water systems, and you've got all these things that are pretty costly, right?
well,
Whereas
and
in,
the
I
AC,
think,
remember they do take care of the AC for you too, because I remember we actually know a couple that their AC went out and it was replaced by the HOA. And we all know how much an AC costs. It's expensive. It's like no less than $10,000, right, to replace an AC. So I mean, you pay that much. It's almost like a home insurance, right? If you live in like a condo, that when something goes wrong, you don't have to worry about anything. You know, your
Yeah.
roof
so
is
I
going to
think I'm
be
guessing those high
replaced.
rises, like anything, like any high rise, even like commercial high rises, condos probably have like chiller systems. I'm guessing, right, where there isn't individual ACs for each unit. It's some kind of chiller system, and that you just each unit taps into and can cool their house as needed. That's what I'm guessing.
Or a mini split.
Mini splits, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
That means that each unit would have its own air conditioning system.
Yeah,
Either way, though,
unfortunately,
I'm guessing these
I
high condo HOA fees probably skew that average. Going back to like taking care of common areas and the amenities and having an impact on the value of your home, I can tell you that over here in Buckeye, it's a stark contrast in home values between what is south of 10 and what's north of 10. They're all basically in an HOA, but I don't know the real reason why why home values haven't held south of 10. But north of 10, they do quite well, going all the way up to Surprise. And they're all basically similar homes. Maybe there's a few more square footage in some of the developments north of 10. But I notice it's 300 to 400 on the south of 10. And then the average is, 400 to 500 north of 10. Have you guys noticed that or know why?
I've seen that a little bit. I haven't really dug into it. My guess would be they just haven't developed that much south of the 10. It was mostly open, I believe, the farming area or ranches, and they just really the communities and the shopping centers, whatnot. They haven't really made a move into that area yet. We're still filling up the north of I-10 up to I-17 along the 303 right now.
I agree, and I also think it's the convenience. Like, so if you notice, a lot of people that live on the west side are young family, right? So if you're like empty nester or like you're professional, you probably want to live on the east side where there's big business, big corporations. So I think on the west side, the most important thing is schools. So I don't think there's schools developed yet for families, for their kids. Maybe that's one of the reasons. So it seems like we're focusing more on distribution center. And so if you're moving in with young family, that's not going to do you anything, right? So for example, I have a house that I put up for rental. The first thing the family asked me, like, hey, the school, right? Will my kids be bused? Do I have to take my kids there? So that's the first thing they're going to ask you. It's school, the convenience. And you and I know when, Kevin, when you have kids, your kids come first, right? Everything comes first.
I've heard in the news recently of nightmare stories where people have not paid their HOA fee, or it flew under the radar for a while. They just didn't see it. And they have either lost their home or a lien has been placed against their home. And I'm sure this isn't, ultra common, but it can happen depending on, I guess, the draconian rules of a particular HOA. Yeah. So recently, Florida, which, as we know, is number one in the nation for HOAs, they just passed a homeowners bill of rights, basically, to kind of counter some of the overreach by HOAs. So they're going to prohibit HOAs from banning common sense parking, fining residents for leaving garbage cans out on trash day, creating rules for the inside of structures or backyards, such as prohibitions against gardens or clotheslines that can't be seen from the street or a neighboring property or common area. And the law also mandates more transparency and accessibility on the part of the HOA officers or management companies. That was from the Tallahassee Democrat just this last week. So that was July 3rd, 2024. And those rules went into effect July 1st. So that's active right now. And I've been hearing rumblings of Arizona, having something similar. So what are the kind of the red flags, or how does a home buyer analyze, or at least kind of assess, what they're getting for their money? How should they look at an HOA and say, okay, that is worth the fee, or that isn't worth the fee? Are there any common sense, guidelines for that?
I would say it depends on who the family are and who you are, right? I mean, what is important to Kevin might not be important to me, right? So like I was going back, so some of the HOA, a gym, a pool, I mean, that might not be important to someone that, I don't care to go to the gym, to the pool. I don't swim anyway. I hate water. So why do I want to pay that, right? And then for someone like me, I would say, hey, I love my kids could go to the pool without me having to drive them. That's perfect. So it really depends on what is important. So that's the first thing. As a realtor, we sit our clients down and we say, hey, what's important to you, right? So we make a list of what's important to you. And that could be, we look at the community, what they have, what's included in the HOA, what is not included in the HOA. So it's very broad. You can't just say, hey, this is what you're looking for, because it's all different. It's not across the board for everybody.
Yeah, and I think the biggest restriction would just be the monthly fee. That would be something that may make someone choose one community over another. At the end, they're just trying to find a house that's close to school and or work. That's really what it is. They want to be safe and they want to have a neat neighborhood. So if I have a community that is $60 a month or another one that's $120 a month, I'm probably going to choose the $60. I've never had anybody really get particular over the HOA other than the fees. It's people, you're always going to have a car payment. You just kind of accept that you're always going to have HOAs in the majority of the areas in Arizona where people are looking for, unless you're retiring. Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
One thing, so let me take that back. Actually, I do had a client because he fixes car, so that's part of like his hobby. So he do like to fix cars on the driveway, and sometimes he had friends over that park there. So in the HOA rule, you can't do car wash. You can't wash your car on the driveway. You can't really do any car maintenance there. So that is basically like a hard stop no to him. Or then there's some that can't park trucks, like we have truck drivers. You can't park your truck at no circumstance, like not even 5 minutes. You can't park there at all, or a trailer. So I think, yes, so that's the important. You have to actually really read your HOA CC&R because it would really suck if you're like a truck driver and you just bought a house, now you're stuck with it, and now your only transportation is the truck that doesn't fit in your garage, and you would have to park it on the street, but you can't because you're going to collect a fee, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's one of something that you need to look into before
might be
purchasing.
cheaper collecting that fee instead of paying for a monthly parking at a at a RV shop or something, But yeah, I've had that.
Here's the thing though, the fee will keep piling up to attorney fees and on top of that late fee, and then before you know it, HOA can't really kick you out of your house, but they can put a lien on your house where you can't sell it, where you can't get refi on it, and sometimes you could even foreclosure. They could actually foreclosure on you when they have a judgment on your house. So that's, it's funny to say, but when it comes down to your house getting foreclosure, they do have that power.
Yeah, you better bring in those trash cans.
So I do agree there with the proponents of HOAs that to me is a big one. Now that I've lived in an HOA, and our HOA is, I think, a good one. It's definitely professionally managed and has several employees who are just dedicated to administrating, making our lives, better, organizing community events, all these sorts of things, managing the amenities. I go through some communities that don't have an HOA, and I do see those oil stains on the street, oil stains in the driveway, tons of cars that don't look like they've been driven for a long time in any given, driveway. And so I agree. I don't see that in my neighborhood at all. And that's one thing I really like about, maybe an HOA is that they're going to enforce those rules that prevent people from doing that. Because frankly, even in those neighborhoods, there's a lot of residents that don't want to see that at all.
Eyesore.
It's an eyesore. It just doesn't add to the sense of community. So people do seem to be voting with their wallets on HOAs because, as we stated earlier, the stat of 70% of new homes built in the U.S. are now managed by an HOA. That's a lot. I mean, and I only think that number is going to increase as it has been since the 70s, what they state here. So, people ultimately want HOAs, and if you don't, well, there's plenty of options, at least here in Arizona, where you don't need an HOA. So, anything else to add?
No, I think you either really like them or you really don't like them.
I think that's the bottom line. Yeah, you're right.
What were you going to say, Sray?
Well, I was want to make sure that people do know the HOA transfer fee. A lot of people don't take that into consideration too, because that do add to your closing costs. So, but those are negotiable. So the HOA transfer fee is when you're purchasing the house and you're transferring the HOA to the new owner. So those HOA transfer fee pays for the administrations, the paperwork and stuff like that, and it could get expensive. So I've seen it as high as $500. So you
try
could actually
10,000. That's the highest I've seen. If they have a golf course and they've got some really premium amenities, and particularly these neighborhoods that are kind of active adult, I've seen these transfer fees really having to be financed into the loan.
So be
they're
really
as high
careful.
they're usually part of a huge chunk of the closing costs.
Well, and a lot of people, they don't consider that when they go into buying, when you're looking at to buy a home, you don't consider the transfer fee of an HOA, right? But when you go deep down the rabbit hole and then you start doing all these paperwork, you put down your earnest money and everything else, and boom, this HOA transfer fee hit you in the back. It was like, oh, I can't. 10,000, like GT said, $10,000. That's like more than all of my closing costs, my escrow and title and everything put together. There's no way. So yeah, just be careful.
Yep. Good thing everything's negotiable, and you can have that communication or that conversation when it comes to that part of the.
That's a good point. Yeah, everything is negotiable, and you can get those wrapped in or even paid for through seller concessions. And so there's a lot of movement right in there. A lot of things that you can negotiate, which is why you guys are here. So that's a wrap, folks. Reach out to us if you want to know more about HOAs, or you just want to know more about the Phoenix real estate market, or have questions about buying or selling a home. Our contact info is below. Lastly, please don't forget to click the like button and subscribe. Until next time.
Take care.